Hi, everyone. Just let's breathe for a second as people are connecting to their audio. Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to Ram Dass's Yoga of Heartfulness. It's really sweet to see so many faces, some familiar, some new, and just excited to be on this journey together. We're here to really nourish and nurture our hearts over these 4 weeks. And, we all have various intentions we're coming with. But I think from our discussions, sort of this idea of living with more peace and ease and joy and understanding and sweetness and equanimity for ourselves and in this world. I'm Jackie Dobrinska. I'll be your host for these 75-minute Monday night Dharma talks, as well as the Thursday afternoon practicums, and we hope that you'll join for all of them. Join live, because then you get a lot of the community and a lot of the interaction. And we have people from around the world joining. We have people from Australia to Southern California to Sweden to New York. And to help build our circle and create this sort of sacred container on this journey together, I'm going to invite you to do a few things. And the first thing is to just presence yourself, to just get here, to be here now. I know when we're on Zoom, it's really easy to multitask and be distracted. And so if you're able to, if you can just simply minimize your distractions and just drop in for a second, feel your body, feel your feet on the floor, feel your sit bones in your chair or whatever you're sitting in, your shoulders relax. Notice where the 10 toes, the base of them, where they meet the feet, and the 10 fingers where the base of them meet the hands. Just breathe into this amazing body. And then breathe into your brilliant and beautiful heart. And then look around the space and notice all of these other brilliant bodies, brilliant souls, and brilliant hearts. That some of there's many others out there who will be watching tomorrow, but all of these people through time and space joining this journey together. And some of you have your videos off, which is understandable, but we do hope that if you're able to, you can turn them on, simply because it helps us feel like we're more in a container together, feel like we're in the community. We might not be able to really feel each other's heartbeats, but at least we can see each other's faces. And then we also ask you to rename yourselves.
I'm on a call, honey.
So that we know where you're coming from. Sorry, we got someone on the back end who's going to make sure we're all muted. Yeah, there we go. So if you can put your pronouns in, as well as where you're from. Lots of people connect to each other by seeing that you're from a similar city. And then if you haven't already, because I'm not watching the chat, but if you haven't already, I invite you to say hi in the chat. And to start this journey of heartfulness, name something that really helps you drop into your heart. It can be really simple stuff. When I hear my cat sigh, my heart always just like grows a little bit, or the morning chorus of the birds. And so I invite you to throw some of those things in the chat. Yoga, mountains, yeah, flowers. And look at everyone coming. Your niece, butterflies, nature. Yeah. Soulmates, dog smiles. Yeah, keep it flowing water. Whales for sure. Yeah, keep those coming. It's really sweet. Just reading about them can sort of open our heart. And just a note, so we have lots of people here on the Zoom live stream who've signed up for the course. And we just want this wisdom to reach out into the world. So for this first class, the Dharma talk section that Mirabai will be giving us, we're actually streaming that part to YouTube. So welcome everyone who's joining from YouTube. The Q&A, the interactive part, and then the rest of the lectures will just be for folks who have signed up for this course. So if you're not signed up and you're interested, please make sure you go to ramdas.org/heart. But for those of you here live, know that the first half of the 75-minute call will be a wonderful talk with Mirabai Star, and the second half we'll be asking for you to ask questions. And we're going to ask you to do that through the chat. You can do it at any time. And we're doing it through the chat just so we can be concise and we can get to as many questions as we can. So we know it's a little absurd to talk about the heart. The heartfulness must be experienced. But through this course, we hope that, we'll gain information, but we also will get these transmissions. We'll get transmissions from the teachers. We'll get transmissions from each other in community in our practicums. We'll get transmissions from something bigger than ourselves that hopefully will really drop us into one of my favorite ways of talking about it is that sweet honey of the heart. So please join for all of those things, and please join live if you're able to. And we really hope that you are dedicated to completing the course and have some really sweet intentions. So if you're not already signed up on the discourse, which is at the top of each of your teachable pages that come through each week, please do, because you can talk with people throughout the week. Every day there's a question prompt. I think the first one today is, what are your intentions? So it's really helpful to actually do those prompts. But the logistics aren't so fun. So I think that's most of them right now. We'll keep coming back to them. Know that each week a new series of lectures will drop for the entire week. It's about 2.5 hours of content, about an hour of these Dharma talks each week, and then we have the 75 minutes of the practicum. So it's about 4.5 to 5 hours of content each week, and so that might help you pace how you do it. And we're really excited about the content and these incredible, incredible wisdom keepers who are joining us live each week. So with that, it's really an incredible pleasure to be joined by Mirabai Star. She's just an amazing human being and holds so much wisdom. And I know her, I met her because she's on the board of Love, Serve, Remember Foundation, and she and I helped start the Ram Dass Women's Satsang together. But I really first fell in love with her when I read her book, Wild Mercy. It really seemed to capture what I know as like a female-based perspective on spirituality and life. And she has many, many other books. She's an award-winning author of creative nonfiction and contemporary translation of sacred literature. She taught philosophy and world religion at the University of New Mexico in Taos for 20 years. And now she speaks all over, so many different places on these contemplative practices and this interspiritual dialogue. She's been a dear friend of Ram Dass since she was 14. She met him in 1975 at the Lama Foundation. And she's been a devotee of his teacher, Neem Karoli Baba, ever since. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to her to share some deep wisdom and drop us into our hearts. And I'll see you all in just a little bit when we move into the Q&A section. Mirabai, thanks so much for being here. Let's all shower her with some love and applause and goodness.
Thank you, Jackie. Good job with the details, and thank you for that loving introduction. So I am going to start off by lighting a candle and invoking sacred space, which has already been invoked, because that happened as soon as we all gathered and Jackie opened her beautiful mouth. Nevertheless, I'm going to specifically call now on the ancestors, and most especially my beloved lifelong friend and mentor Ram Dass. And so as we gather in circle here, we ask him to gather with us, to guide and illumine our efforts to show up in the heart in the ways that he taught us or so beautifully modeled. Calling also on the ancestors of all of our loved ones, those of our genetic lineages and also our spiritual lineages, to gather with us as we dive into the vast and juicy and dangerous landscape of the heart. There's a reason people don't hang out in heart space. It's perilous. There are things we lose when we dare to go there, come here. Mostly our identification with the illusion of a separate self. That's one of the main casualties of entering into heart space. But the mystics of all traditions invite us to die before we die. Die before we die. So that's a kind of beautiful death that we may experience when we don't just skim the surface of the heart on a course or a seminar or a beautiful book, but actually walk across that threshold. But we're not alone. We're in this together. And so we can take courage in community. So welcome, my friends. What I hope to do is to introduce this course in such a way that it feels invitational, feels inclusive, that it resonates with your actual lived experience. Because one of the things that Ram Dass was so beautiful at doing was reclaiming our ordinary lives as holy ground. So rather than seeing spiritual attainment as some distant, arduous journey that most of us could never hope to attain or ascend to, how about looking around at the very furniture of your everyday life and reclaiming its sacredness, including, and maybe most especially, our own neuroses and imperfections, and or that which we perceive as being imperfect. So all the spiritual traditions that I know of, are rooted in some ideal of purity and perfection. This is, I dare say, if you will forgive me, a patriarchal paradigm. And when I say patriarchy, I'm not just like dissing dudes. People of all genders suffer from this kind of conditioning. I mean, it is true that most of the world's religions were designed by and for male people, but many women are just as patriarchal as men, and people of all genders feel, excuse me, burdened by this way of seeing that makes us never enough, whilst simultaneously, in some cases, being too much. Too much what? Too emotional, too sensitive, too hungry, too wanting, too filled with desire, too broken. And so this path of the heart is one in which we allow all of those realities of the human predicament, as Ram Dass called it, to be not only problems to be solved, but grist for the mill. The very energy of our awakening. And our awakening is partly awakening into the fact of our humanity and our interconnectedness, not only with all humans, but with all life. That's what the path of the heart shows us. That's one of the things that dissolves in the fire of the heart, is this illusion of separation. This is when we melt and flow into the wholeness that is our birthright. So let's take a moment to breathe that in for a moment. Breathe in the fact that we belong to each other, and that our particular foibles are, as Ram Dass used to say, nothing new by nobody special. Same with our gifts. They're all threads in this beautiful tapestry of this fleeting incarnation. So breathing in deeply, maybe holding your inhalation for a few beats before breathing all the way out and really lingering on the out breath. Maybe do that a couple of times on your own as I continue noticing the way the breath helps center you even more deeply and regulates your nervous system and allows you to be a little more present. Jackie quoted from my favorite saint, Santa Teresa de Avila, Saint Teresa of Avila, who I've had the great good fortune of translating into contemporary English. She was a 16th century Spanish mystic. And the quote was, the important thing is not to think much, but to love much, and so to do whatever best awakens you to love. Actually, the whole quote is, if you want to make progress on the path and ascend to the places you've longed for, the important thing is not to think much, but to love much, and so to do whatever best awakens you to love. And that comes from the Interior Castle. So I was just going to read the paragraph that follows that quote. If anyone's interested, it's page 91, in case you get your hands on this book one day. It was one of the great privileges of my life was translating this book. In fact, I translated the Interior Castle while I was going through the most difficult period of my entire life, which was the first year following the sudden death of my daughter Jenny in a car accident in the end of 2001. And that was that following year during which I was kind of observing a quasi-Jewish mourning cycle. I just stayed close to home and worked on this beautiful book, which worked on me. So she says, after the important thing is not to think much, but to love much, and so to do whatever best awakens you to love. She goes on to say, maybe we don't know what love is. It wouldn't surprise me one bit, she says, to find out this is true. That's because love is not only about our own happiness, but about trying to please our beloved in every way. Don't assume that you're never supposed to think about anything else, and that if you become a little distracted, all is lost. I used to be tormented by this turmoil of thoughts, Teresa says. A little over 4 years ago, I came to realize by experience that thinking is not the same as mindfulness. I hadn't been able to understand why, if the mind is one of the faculties of the soul, it is sometimes so restless. Thoughts fly around so fast that only God can anchor them. And when He does, we feel almost as if we were disconnected from the body. It was driving me crazy to see the faculties of my soul calmly absorbed in remembrance of God, while my thoughts, on the other hand, were wildly agitated. I mean, does this sound familiar? 500 years ago, my friends, in a cloistered Carmelite monastery, this woman was going, what? Why can't I meditate for 5 minutes without my mind flying all over the place? And she was a professional religious person. Oh, beloved, she goes on to say, bear in mind what anguish we have to suffer on this path through lack of knowing the truth. The trouble is that since we think all we have to do is concentrate our thoughts on you, we can't conceive of how to ask the ones who know the truth about this. We suffer terrible trials because we do not understand ourselves. We worry about things we think are bad, which are actually good things. And the good things that she's talking about are whenever we make the effort to come back to the heart. For Teresa of Avila, mindfulness and heartfulness are completely entwined, and I'll talk about that in a sec. When we make that effort to sit in the heart space, we are doing all the work. She goes on to say we are doing the work that needs to be done. In her vision of the interior castle, she actually saw our souls as these beautiful crystal palaces, the most beautiful place in all of creation, which is why God herself chooses to dwell in the center of our souls. And our task is to make our way, make our journey to the center of ourselves, where we can have union with the beloved. And that effort, striving, in Arabic, the word is jihad, which is a very holy word that has been totally co-opted by Fox News. But jihad actually means striving to align oneself with the beloved in our own being. So when we do that efforting to sit, to be, to collect, to draw inward, we are, Teresa says, doing what needs to be done. We are with the beloved in the center of our being. And what's going on in the periphery of the castle, as she calls it, which are where all these little kind of poisonous creatures, vipers and serpents, are hanging out. What's going on in the periphery with our wild thoughts, that turmoil of thoughts, the wild horse of the mind, is really important. It's like doing, she says, we gain great merit from that struggle. Like Jacob struggling with the angel of God all night long and being renamed Israel in the morning. These struggles are part of the path of awakening. They're not useless. You're not doing anything bad and wrong. It's built in. But here's the key, friends. For Ram Dass, this was certainly the case. And let's see if we can really take the invitation and say yes to it. And that is to not judge ourselves and beat ourselves up, but to actually lovingly accept all of the ways that we don't easily slip right into samadhi and treat everyone who comes into contact with us as God in drag. It takes practice, and it takes gentleness and tenderness with ourselves. I want to invoke Mother Mary here, because May, this month of May, in the Christian tradition, particularly the Roman Catholic tradition, is the month of Mother Mary. And she is the embodiment of unconditional loving kindness. In Hebrew, the word is chesed, loving kindness, metta in Pali. Kuan Yin and Tara are also incarnations, bodhisattvas of mercy and compassion. The opening phrase of the Quran in Islam, which is repeated throughout the prayers, the salat, the prayers, are Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of God, in the name, the holy names, the names of God, as Krishna Das has taught us about so much. The name of God in all of the holy names of God. But in this case, God as mercy and compassion. And so we invoke the Divine Mother in this adventure of heartfulness, of coming back again and again to the heart. That Mother Mary herself is not just Jesus's mom, but the mother of the world, as is Kuan Yin, as is Tara and Kali and Durga. Can you call upon the Sacred Mother in this time, regardless of what your own relationship with your mother might have been? Because some of us have troubled relationships with our mothers. Thank God we have the Divine Mother to draw upon, to re-parent us, to re-mom us. She is available. Ram Dass was very deeply connected to the divine feminine. When I had a conversation with him while I was writing Wild Mercy, asking him about his relationship with the sacred feminine, he said, I'm half of each. I'm half masculine, male, and half female, and I always have been. So my experience with the word heartfulness was that it came to me very kind of spontaneously and naturally, as I think it has with many of us, when I was writing Caravan of No Despair, which was the memoir about the death of my daughter. And it's not all sad, by the way. A lot of it is kind of entertaining because it's about growing up in the counterculture, the Taos and Lama Foundation in the 1970s. So there's vintage Ram Dass in there. But this was toward the end of the book when this phrase heartfulness came to me. And I thought I'd read you a page where I am expressing, not explaining, but expressing what I meant by heartfulness when I had this huge epiphany. With reticence at first, and then with mounting courage, I dared to mourn my child. From the very beginning, I suspected that something holy was happening, and that if I were to push it away, I would regret it for the rest of my life. There was this sense of urgency, as if turning from death meant turning from my child. I wanted to offer Jenny the gift of my commitment to accompany her on her journey away from me, even if to do so simply meant dedicating my heartbeat and my breath to her and paying attention. Now, feel free in this moment to translate death of my child for any difficult experience you have had or may be having. And so I showed up. When a feeling I did not think I could survive would threaten to engulf me, I practiced turning toward it with the arms of my soul outstretched, and then my heart would unclench a little and make space for the pain. Years of contemplative practice had taught me just enough to know better than to believe everything I think, how to shift from regretting the past and fearing the future to abiding with what is, in this case, a totally fucked up thing, the ultimate fucked up thing. I sat with that. I did not engage in this practice to prove something to myself or anyone else. I was not interested in flexing my spiritual muscles. I did it for Jenny. My willingness to stay present through this process was an act of devotion. By leaning into the horror and yielding to the sorrow, by standing in the fire of emptiness and saying yes to the mystery, I was honoring my child and expressing my ongoing love for her. It was not mere mindfulness practice. It was heartfulness practice. So the epiphany for me as a bereaved mother, and each of you have your own version of shattering heartbreak, including for some of you this one, the loss of a child, but whatever your different shattering losses may be, we can approach it and say, okay, I've learned all the stuff. I have the tools to endure this, to get through it, even to transmute it, even to transcend it, sometimes known as spiritual bypassing, right? To use our spiritual concepts and practices to check out of reality. But in this case, what we're saying is, how about if I open my heart in the midst of the fire of my suffering? What Stephen Levine talked about as keeping your heart open in hell. Not because I'm trying to show I can do it, I'm spiritual enough to do this, but rather as an act of love, as an act of devotion. Now, in my case, it was an act of love and devotion to my child, to my daughter, Jenny. But we can do it as an offering of love to the Guru, to our own childlike self, to whatever stimulates or awakens the heart. As Teresa says, whatever best awakens you to love. So that when we are having the human experience and it's hard, we can mindfully be present and breathe into it, yes. Cultivate that loving witness, or just that witness that is able to see the one who is suffering with compassion and presence, and also to love ourselves through it, to gently and tenderly soften. Maharaji said, "A saint's heart melts like butter." Even more than that, butter melts when it comes close to the fire, flame. A saint's heart melts when anyone else's heart comes close to the fire. This path of heartfulness, this path of awakening, isn't only about getting better at the human condition, the predicament, but it's not only about waking up ourselves individually, as you well know. It's about waking up collectively. It's about stepping up with compassion for the sake of all beings. And what better way to cultivate compassion than to be present for our own suffering and expand our hearts. The shattered heart is the broken open heart, and the broken open heart has the capacity to hold everything. I'm trying to remember where we are. Okay. Good. So I think let's do this together for a moment. What I'd like to do is take a moment to ponder, contemplate some aspect of your personality, your habitual experience, your behavior that you find difficult, maybe shameful, annoying. Like, really, that's still happening? You know, in one of those Ram Dass talks, he names these aspects of his personality, his shmoo, SCHMOO. And a shmoo for Ram Dass was like this furry, cute little pet. And they were all his neuroses, all of his bad habits, all of the ways that he still found himself doing the dance with the same steps that tripped him up all along. Like, I've done all of this spiritual practice. I've sat at the feet of all of these great teachers. I've trekked the Himalayas. I've found my guru in the flesh in this lifetime. I am lauded as, this great teacher and author. This is Ram Dass now. And I still have these shameful thoughts like 25 times a day. What? And eventually he came to the point where he just had to look at them as his fuzzy little friends that weren't going to go anywhere. And so you might as well invite them in for tea. So what I'd like to do is for you to think about a shmoo or two of your own. And our friends here, Jackie and Gina, will open up the chat for a moment, and you can just pop them in and we won't judge you. We will all go, oh, good. You too? So what you got? What are some of your shmoos? Jackie, feel free to read some of them out.
Yeah,
And you
shame,
guys can scram.
unworthiness, fear of ridicule, defensive insecurity, being judgy, anxiety, no one likes you, you don't belong, feeling less than, wanting to control other people, self-loathing, irritability with people in my life, grief, impatience, endless thinking, feeling not enough, overthinking, anger and resentments, grasping, yearning, needing, not worthy of love, inability to get it right, unworthiness, too much, not enough. But to feel superior and victimized, self-critical, compulsiveness, disordered aspects, jealousy.
That's good. Maybe just read a couple more and then.
Okay. I think not enough comes up a lot. Judging comes up a lot. Shame, insecurities, grief, actions we judge ourselves for, smoking, the ways we eat, being bossy, fear of failure, sort of hypervigilance, being whiny, a wall of defense against vulnerability.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wanting to be special. Yeah, me too.
Loneliness. Yeah.
Oh, sweethearts. So good to know we're all in this together. I love this. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to spill this into the chat so we can all see and connect with the reality of being human. Good. Thank you. So let's just breathe that in for a minute and breathe it back out. Noticing that everyone suffers, everyone feels shame, everyone feels exasperated with ourselves for struggling with the same issues again and again. All of us carry and bear the burden of the patriarchy in all the spiritual traditions that has made us feel like there is some end goal called enlightenment. And when we get there, we will no longer suffer and we will no longer act like assholes. And I think this has done us great injustice. I mean, yes, we have some examples and exemplars of luminous beings that woke up and stayed awake, but they're very few. And this seems to be an age, in fact, in which we are all being called to embody our humanity and relax the goal-oriented effort to become pure and perfect, but rather to recognize that we already are. That, as Ramdas reminded us, Atman is who we are. The true self, the God self, is Atman, who is always and forever and inextricably connected to Brahman, the one, the absolute. And Teresa of Avila said it too in the interior castle. We're already the dwelling place of the beloved. We are already worthy, no matter what. So, one of the topics that Ramdas speaks about in this Path of the Heart is sympathetic joy, which is one of the four most beautiful qualities in Buddhism, one of the highest qualities of being, along with loving kindness and compassion and equanimity. Sympathetic joy is the fourth of those. So loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, and sympathetic joy, these are the highest qualities of the heart. So I want to talk about sympathetic joy for a moment because I find that sort of an underrepresented quality of the heart. We don't talk about much. What is sympathetic joy, mudita? It has to do with when someone else experiences something wonderful, our heart leaps for them. And Teresa of Avila writes about this very eloquently. This is a little book where I collected all my favorite bits from Teresa, from all of her writings, her poetry, her teachings, little short passages, most of which I translated myself, and then I have interspersed kind of poetic reflections on those teachings. So the one I want to read to you right now is page 69. It's from, here we go, from the Interior Castle. And she says, sometimes I observe people so diligently trying to orchestrate whatever state of prayer they're in that they become peevish about it. They don't dare to move or let their minds be stirred for fear of jeopardizing the slightest degree of devotion or delight. It makes me realize how little they understand about the path to union. They think the whole thing is about bliss. But no, friends, no. What the beloved wants from us is action. What he wants is that if one of your friends is sick, you take care of her. Don't worry about interrupting your devotional practice. Have compassion. If she is in pain, you feel it too. If necessary, you fast so that she can eat. This is not a matter of indulging an individual. You do it because you know it is your beloved's desire. This is true union with his will. Sorry about the masculine pronouns. Again, feel free to translate them in your own mind. If I was translating this again, I would. What he wants is for you to be much happier hearing someone else praised than you would be to receive a compliment yourself. If you have humility, this is easy. It is a great thing to be glad when your friend's virtues are celebrated. And when you see a fault in another, it is good to be as sorry as if it were your own and make an effort to conceal it. Now, just, know that she's coming from a 16th century monastic kind of paradigm, Christian paradigm. And so there's a little bit of self-flagellation going on there. But that aside, she's invoking this quality of the heart that Buddhists call sympathetic joy, wherein we naturally, spontaneously experience how wonderful it is when someone else has something wonderful happen. When, for me, it's when someone I know gets a book accepted for publication, or gets a one great high profile speaking gig, or something that I have worked hard for. When I see someone else receiving that kind of recognition and happiness, it makes me so happy. I mean, it probably didn't always, but somewhere along the line, I think from being broken down enough by life, it softened my needing to hold on to everything, or even my illusion that it was ever mine, any of it. I don't know what exactly did it except for the fire of suffering that softened the heart enough to feel those surges of sympathetic joy. And I don't always. Sometimes I'm like, really? How come not me? How come him and not me? But more and more, there is this kind of resonance that recognizes that what goodness comes to anyone, comes to everyone, all of us. So, what else do I want to talk to you about? So, Kali and Durga in the Hindu tradition are the aspects of the Divine Mother that are most beloved, that are most vast. And as a woman from India told me many years ago, Kali and Durga are not the female aspects of God. They're not the consorts. They are God. Kali is God. Or as my friend Eve Ilson, who's the widow of Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, one of my beloved teachers who created the whole Jewish renewal movement, which is very much an interspiritual movement. When we were talking about this Shekhinah, the indwelling feminine presence in the Jewish mystical tradition, she said the Shekhinah is not Mrs. God. The Shekhinah is God. And that is true for Kali and for Durga in the Hindu tradition. Maybe I'll speak about the Shekhinah for a moment before we shift over to Kali and Durga, and then draw to a close and open it up for your questions and reflections. But the Shekhinah, for those of you who are not familiar, is immanence. So the indwelling aspect of the Godhead. The Shekhinah is indwelling, immanent, embodied. So there's the transcendent absolute Godhead, which is unknowable, and yet we long for union with that transcendent God that's Brahman in the Hindu tradition. And then the Shekhinah is the way that we do connect with the absolute in this life, in this, as I called it earlier, fleeting incarnation. We're here for the twinkling of an eye, so we might as well explore embodiment and relationship. The beautiful dance of duality and non-duality that plays out in the field of our own hearts every day. So the Shekhinah is that indwelling presence that comes pouring in, especially when we call out to her. In fact, in Judaism, one of the most beautiful practices is Shabbat, and it happens every week. On Friday, when the sun goes down, we light two candles, two taper candles, representing Chesed and Gevurah, loving kindness and righteous discernment. And we invoke the Shekhinah. We call on her, come, Ma, come flowing in through every open window and fill us with your divine presence. We welcome you. We need you. We require you. You help us navigate this holy landscape of our humanity and of our interdependence with all beings and with the earth herself. We need you. And then in the Jewish mystical tradition, she leaves again at sunset on Saturday. She comes to remind us of who we are and what is true, the immanence of the holy, of which we ourselves are the receptacle. And then she goes back into exile. But this is the time of reclaiming that immanence, that indwelling feminine presence all the time. Her exile is over. The beloved is made manifest in our bodies and in our interactions with all other bodies. So, Kali and Durga. Kali loves us so much, Ram Dass taught me when I was a teenager, and I was scared of her. She loves us so much, so fiercely and so unconditionally, that she will slice away everything that stands between us and union with God. That's her job. She wants all of her children to be liberated. And so when you call on Kali, you are asking her to come and take away everything that burdens your heart and keeps you from the liberation of knowing who you truly are, which is already one with the one. And Durga is just as unconditionally loving, but perhaps less bloody and fierce. I mean, she's still fierce. Her consort is a tiger after all. But she has a gentler method for waking us up and bringing us home. So I'd like to close this part, although it's going to be difficult for me because my throat is being weird, but with a simple chant to Durga that Krishnadas taught me also when I was a teenager, and he wasn't much older. And the words are simply, Hey Mata Durga, Hey Mata Durga, calling on Mother Durga to come into our hearts and transfigure them with her unconditional love. So even though you're muted, please sing with me. Breathing into our bodies, dropping down from the head to the heart. Hey Mata Durga, 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 Mata, 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 Mata. One more time. Hey Mata Durga, 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 Mata, 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 Mata. Jai Shri Ma.
Thank you so much, Mirabai. That was so beautiful. I know singing is one of the things that opens my heart so brilliantly, and you just brought so much wisdom. Yeah, and So before we move into questions, there's some really lovely questions that have come in through the chat. Please also ask your questions there. I also want to say goodbye to the people who've been watching on YouTube. This is the section that we're keeping this and all of the future Dharma talks, as well as the course material, or for those who signed up. So please, if you haven't, check it out, ramdas.org/heart. We really hope that you'll be a part of these incredible teachings and this incredible community. So thank you for being here. And we'll say goodbye to those folks and then move into our Q&A.